The May 17th, 2017 meeting of the Windsor Planning Commission will now come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Gail Schick,
Present.
Doug Dennison,
Present.
Mike McWilliams,
Present.
Jerry Bushelman,
Present.
Ron Harding,
Present.
Tim Annabelle.
Here.
Thanks, Crystal. First item on tonight's agenda is a review of the agenda itself by the Planning Commission for any addition of items or new business to be added to the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hannibal, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And motion carries unanimously. Next item is public invited to be heard. If there is anyone in tonight's audience who wishes to address the commission for an item that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time to do so. Anybody coming up to the podium to address either the commission on an item that is not on tonight's agenda or to speak during a public hearing, you have a 3-minute time limit, and there's a red light, green light indicator on the podium, so you'll know when your 3 minutes is up. 30 seconds before your 3 minutes is up, you'll get the yellow light on the podium, so that's how we try to control all the time for anybody coming up to the podium. So it looks like there be none that are coming up right now. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, which is under the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2017 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Second.
Who said that? Mike. It's been moved by Commissioner Hannibal, seconded by Commissioner McWilliams, that we approve the minutes as presented. Was that a Harding on the motion? You're good. We'll take that back. Moved by Commissioner Harding, seconded by Commissioner McWilliams. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving into board action items, we will close our regular meeting, open up a public hearing for a conditional use grant to allow oil and gas facilities in Water Valley Subdivision Lot 5. Carlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item before you is a conditional use grant for Lot 5 of Water Valley West. The request is for oil and gas facilities located in the RMU Residential Mixed Use Zone District. The municipal code outlines the conditional use grant process. Under this section of the code, there is a specific, there are specific criteria for oil and gas facilities. And this outlines the process and procedures. Under section 16760, conditional use grants for oil and gas facilities. Oil and gas facilities are permitted as a conditional use in any zoning district. Oil and gas facilities as conditional uses are subject to approval by the town board with conditions herein, and those conditions are based on specific site characteristics, including the nature and proximity adjacent to development, prevailing weather patterns, including wind direction, vegetative cover on or adjacent to the site, and topography of the site. And the town board may, as a condition of approval, require any of the following methods to mitigate adverse impacts on surrounding properties. Those being visual requirements, landscape requirements, and floodplain requirements. And I will go through that as we go through the presentation. First, the site is located 3/4 of a mile north of Liberty Road, New Liberty Road, and 3/4 of a mile west of 7th Street. This area here is the Poudre Trail. This area here would be the drilling pad site, and the proposal is for 59 wells on this northern pad. Adjacent to it is a sim-op pad, which may or may not be used for this facility. And over here is the production pad, and that includes 8 tanks and 25 separators. Again, the site is zoned residential mixed use, and it is surrounded by single-family residential zoning to the east and the same zoning district to the north, west, and south. The comprehensive plan land use plan identifies this area as mixed-use residential. This is an overview of the proposed pads in proximity to residential homes. And as you'll see here, the closest home to the drilling pad is 893 feet to the north. The closest one to the production pad is approximately 984 feet. There are also single-family residential lots to the east that are undeveloped at this time. The Poudre Trail has been temporarily relocated. The temporary trail runs along this area here. And the proposed permanent location will eventually end up going between the 2 pads and running northwest back to the trail alignment. Also on this map, the floodplain boundary is shown. The pads themselves for drilling and the production are outside of the 100-year floodplain. The sim-ops pad is within the 100-year floodplain. Engineering has accepted that as suitable because there will be no structures located on that pad site. It's only for vehicles, which would be a temporary situation. This is a profile showing what the trail reroute will look like and the berming that will be adjacent to the trail. The applicant will be required to provide berming as well as landscaping, completely shielding the view of the oil and gas wells and tanks from those that are on the Poudre Trail. This just shows the drilling pad in more detail. The 59 wells are shown here. Again, the trail alignment is currently along here. It is not the concrete, it is more of a decompressed granite, like crusher fine material that has been greatly compressed to create basically a surface that's similar to pavement. And this is the proposed production pad. Again, 25 separators along here and eight tanks in this location and another 4 for water in this area. And this site is approximately 3.83 acres. Going back to the drilling pad quickly, that site is approximately 5.5 acres. The overall property consists of 362 acres and approximately 78 acres would be used for the pads as well as access. So in access, the proposed access point is, let's see, it's right here on New Liberty Road that does align with Hilltop Drive. At this time, there has not been any formal approvals for the access road. There are existing easements, and one of the conditions of approval is that the access point and the access road is finalized. And the truck hauling route will be from the site at New Liberty Road. The trucks will take County Road 64 out to County Road 13, south to Crossroads Boulevard, and then west out to I-25. One of the conditions of approval is that the trucks avoid school traffic and rush hour traffic times. That is in more detail in the conditions of approval, which I'll go through in more detail. And this is just a close-up of the access here. This road here is for the SimOps pad. They do not have access to 7th Street. This is just the easement that's existing right now. And these are profiles showing the berming and landscaping that is proposed. Quite a bit of grading going on right now. Some of those berms are being formed at this point. You'll see over here, this shows the screening that one would see if they were traveling along the Poudre Trail. And over here, this is the view that would be from the northwest edge of the drill pad. And security fencing, in accordance to the state regulations, will be provided. The town requires that they're coated with vinyl and painted to be consistent with earth tones. So there was a neighborhood meeting that was held on March 2nd at the rec center. There were 50 attendees. From Great Western are included in your packet. The notification for this meeting was done as follows. May 1st, the property was posted with a public hearing sign. On May 1st, the mailings were sent out to adjacent property owners within 500 feet per the municipal code regulations. A legal notice was posted on the town's website on May 1st and published in the Tribune on May 5th. And this area highlighted in yellow shows the properties that received notification. So getting into the conditions, staff is recommending that Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the conditional use grant to the town board with the following conditions. And first, remaining Planning Commission comments that you may have today, that those are addressed, and staff comments shall be addressed. The staff comments right now include finalizing the landscape plan as well as the access road and easements. The hauling route shall remain in accordance with the exhibit that was shown here. The hauling periods shall avoid before and after school traffic, 7:30 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. and 2:45 p.m. through 3:30 p.m. and avoid the peak times of commuter traffic from 7 to 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 to 6 p.m. And the landscape screening shown on the plan will be completed no later than 60 days after the initial drilling phase and shall not be postponed until development of the golf course. That was one of staff's concerns on the current landscape plan, and the applicant has agreed to those terms. Irrigation shall be included to ensure establishment of all plant materials. And fifth, the sound walls shall be set back a minimum of 30 feet from the Poudre Trail, both the temporary and permanent trails. The concern there was that the sound walls could abut the trail and be more of a hindrance. And to my knowledge, the 30 feet from the Poudre Trail will not be an issue in this case. Condition 6, that the town standard conditions for oil and gas facilities with amendments are addressed. And there are a couple of changes or modifications that I'll get into here. The first standard condition is that the applicant submit a comprehensive drilling and site improvement plans for review and approval by the town. This also includes letter A below the site access plan. So the drilling and site improvement plans, the access points, haul routes, and the access road, that all still needs to be reviewed and approved by the engineering department. B, the public street cleanup and tracking prevention. This ensures that the drilling and the production sites stay clean and that mud isn't tracked onto the public streets, and if so, they're cleaned up immediately. Site grading, that the drilling and site plan improvements and supplemental information addresses site grading, including any earth berms for emergency containment. The applicant has been working on this with engineering. They have changed some of the grading to address the water line and sewer line that are in proximity to the access road. The site lighting, one of the standard conditions includes that the site lighting fixtures and locations use the full cutoff light fixtures to mitigate any light pollution. The applicant shall install a buffer to screen the initial drilling activities. And as mentioned before, they'll be using a sound wall. They'll also be creating some berming with landscaping. Let's see, the temporary buffer and sound wall shall enclose the drilling operations to provide screening and noise mitigation barriers in the direction of nearby homes as appropriate. One of the things to note on this site, due to the location and changing wind and weather, that the sound varies from hour to hour, day to day. The applicant has stated that the sound walls would mitigate any of the noise that would be associated with the drilling operations in this manner. Long-term screening will include the berms and the landscaping as shown in the plans. And the fencing as shown in this presentation. Those will be around the perimeter of the site for both security and will be painted and consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. As far as oil and gas equipment, the applicant shall utilize electric motors in order to mitigate the noise impacts to neighboring properties. The applicant shall utilize noise dampening methods consistent with best management practices utilized in the basin. Such methods include, but are not limited to, sound walls, blankets, and other noise mitigation installed at the source of any equipment creating such noise. Noise mitigation methods used by extraction oil and gas, known as the Quiet Fleet technology by Liberty Oil Field Services, is one of the examples that should be replicated, and therefore it's included in this condition. Number 2, that the applicant shall ensure that the wells and tanks are of the minimum size required to satisfy present and future functional requirements to mitigate visual impacts. And 4, that all tanks and equipment shall be painted to blend in with the surrounding landscape, typically the tan or earth tone colors. Air quality, the applicant shall participate in any EPA air quality monitoring and testing by allowing EPA to install equipment on site for said monitoring and testing. And second, that the applicant shall install and operate an emissions control device capable of reducing the organic compound emissions on the subject oil and gas equipment in accordance with the COGCC and Department of Public Health. And third, the applicant shall submit to the town copies of all air emissions reporting as required by the COGCC and the Public Health Department's Air Pollution Control Division. Under water quality, the applicant shall ensure that any hydrocarbon discharges from any site comply with all state and federal water quality requirements. In addition to this standard condition is the language here in italics that any hydrocarbon discharges shall be properly reported to the COGCC and remediated according to COGCC requirements in all cases. And this shall also be reported to the Windsor local government designee. Second, the applicant shall provide test results from groundwater baseline sampling and monitoring required by COGCC Rule 318A.E4 to the town. In K, under emergency containment, the secondary containment berm surrounding all storage vessels shall be designed and constructed to contain a minimum of 110% of the volume of the largest vessel located within the containment area, or to the state of Colorado standards, whichever requirements are more stringent. The applicant shall submit to the town copies of all waste management reports as required by the COGCC and or the public health rules and regulations. And the following certification blocks shall be included on the drilling and site plan, which I believe they're currently shown on the plans. A signed owner's acknowledgement certification block, as well as a signed drilling operations acknowledgement certification block. And then the following notes shall be included on the drilling and site plan improvement plans The applicant shall comply with all rules and regulations of the COGCC. The applicant shall comply with all rules and regulations of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. The applicant shall maintain ongoing compliance with all conditions of the town and Windsor Severance Fire Rescue. That the facility shall be kept clean and otherwise properly maintained at all times. If the access to the site is proposed from a town of Windsor street, which it is, such access point shall require approval from the town of Windsor Engineering Department, and any required access improvements, street cleanup, tracking pads, etc. shall be addressed accordingly. And number 2, also a standard condition, the applicant shall address and comply with the conditions of the Windsor Severance Fire Rescue. And 3rd, this was in addition to the standard conditions, that all trucks and equipment shall be equipped with and utilize white noise backup alarms. At this time, staff requests that the following be entered into the record: application and supplemental materials. This also includes a couple public comments attached to your report, the staff memo and supporting documents, all testimony presented during the public hearing, and the recommendation. And that concludes my presentation, and I will turn it over to the applicant for a brief presentation.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. Take a breath.
No?
No,
Okay.
we can,
You
we have,
want to address anything?
Matt must have some questions. We brought the master development plans, things like that, I wanted to see them, but I'm guessing that's already in your packet.
It is, so maybe if you want to address the conditions at all, do you have any concerns?
You might want to state your name and address
Yeah,
for the
go ahead.
record, for the chair, and ask him if he's got any questions.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, my name is Eric Creed, 611 Yukon Court here in Windsor. We'd be happy to answer any questions. We didn't prepare a presentation, but this is a very visible project, we understand that, and so I'm sure there's a lot of concerns. We have a big team here tonight, and so we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, how about if we do this, since this is the public hearing portion of the process, we'll see if there's anybody in the audience has any comments, questions, and then when we go to the next agenda item to decide on this, we'll see if we can get some answers then from you, okay? Is there anyone in the audience has any comments, questions pertaining to this agenda item? If you do, if you could come up to the podium, give us your name and address and your comments and or questions. I was gonna say, come on, there has to be one.
I'll be great.
My name's Carmen Polka. I live at 1449 Hilltop Circle. I currently have 3 oil sites right next to my house. And I've worked with extraction a lot in the process. And I think that it's important to recognize that through this process, I think we need to understand the implications for our neighborhoods and our communities. And I think that we put a lot of things at risk for money. And there's no berm, there's no tree, there's no sound barrier that will take away the implications of putting these sites where you're going to put them. Because I live with them. I live with 3. So while the active drilling is over, that doesn't mean it's over. We continue to have things that come up. The towers go up. My boys call them the Eiffel Towers. And they disrupt our life. There's, we rely on the regulations from the Oil and Gas Commission. We rely on public health. But we are ruled by those regulations, and we have limitations within those regulations. And because we have limitations, there are allowances for things that are not safe. So I think that it's important to be mindful of the desire for oil and gas and what it can potentially do monetarily for a community, and then to be mindful of the negative implications for the community, because that's what I deal with every day. That's what I drive into. And I'm gonna tell you that going through this process was not easy. I had the Oil and Gas Commission at my house. I had extraction at my house for a neighborhood meeting because it was out of control. I don't want other neighbors to go through that. It took 3 years for me. I was the lead person in my neighborhood. I'm the person that stood up. Obviously, I don't mind standing up. Someone has to have a voice. And the issue is that those neighbors in that neighborhood, they don't understand what's about to happen. And they won't understand until the lights come on at midnight. They won't understand until the sound doesn't go away. They won't understand until they're burning the methane over and over and over, and you can't let your kids go outside because it smells. Because it seems like it's toxic, but the Oil and Gas Commission will tell you that it's not, and so will the public safety.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what to do now. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Is there anyone else who has any comments or questions? If there's none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Harding that we close the public hearing. It's been seconded by Commissioner McWilliams. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. The motion carries unanimously. We'll now reconvene our regular meeting, moving on to agenda item number 2, which is the recommendation of town board for the conditional use grant for oil and gas facilities, Water Valley West Subdivision Lot 5. Carlin, anything further that you have?
I have nothing further for the presentation, but I did want to note, because these are 2 different pad sites, that they need to be 2 separate actions.
Okay. So if we could maybe have the applicant address some of the things that were brought up by the lady just a moment ago in her comments. If you could give us some feedback on that.
Thank you again. This has been a long process. This past May 9th was 4 years that I've been working with Martin Lind and Water Valley on this project, and obviously a few years ago it became radioactive when we were a mile to the west. We've taken a lot of steps and measures and what will it ultimately cost tens of millions of dollars to move to the east and minimize in every possible way the impact this will have or not have on Windsor and those neighborhoods to the east. I've met with some of them, Dr. Tippett, John Borges, I think Cummins was the other gentleman. We've talked about a berm in their backyard to hide that stuff. I don't know if you've seen the subdivisions that are sprouting up at 7th Street and Crossroads, right up around Extraction's Fry Farm pad. It's been a while since I drove through there. I'm working in Denver these days, but I drove through there tonight on my way back from Denver. And there's probably 50 houses sitting on and around that pad. You know, Martin, I don't know if you know, but has a pad in the middle of his golf course. With berms and trees, it disappears. And that's not a perfect answer, but right now, today, that's the best that we can do. It's the best that anybody can do. We have gone through a long list both with the town of Windsor and the Oil and Gas Commission of BMPs that we can implement to mitigate this in every possible way. There's no perfect answer, and I'm not going to try to tell you there is, but we think we've kind of done everything we can to minimize the impacts.
Okay. Question I have is, do you have any issues with any of the conditions that are listed?
No,
by
sir.
Staff? You're okay with all of those?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments from the commission?
Yeah, you guys are you in a, is this a sweet or a sour field?
That's a good question. I'm not a geologist. I have one here, though.
Sweet. Okay. You've done the testing? Okay.
There's our existing rain dance well. It's existing, it's sitting out there now, that we will P&A.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
How much flaring will be going on with that?
I'm sorry?
How much flaring will be going on?
Scott, you wanna?
Could I get you to come up to the podium and give us your name and
I can't
address?
quite hear. I'm the deaf one up here.
We just need that for the record so we can,
Okay, my name's Steve Harris. I'm at 11842 West 39th Place, Wheat Ridge, Colorado. The only flaring that will be going on will be during the completion phase while the well starts, when it starts out producing water, and as it turns over, it starts producing oil and gas. We have a flare on site if we need it, just until we get saleable quantities of gas, and that's usually within less than a week. A lot of times it'll turn quick enough that there'll be zero flaring whatsoever, but the maximum time that we've experienced in this area is about 7 days.
Is that process you just referred to, this, the few days up to 7, is that for each well you fire up or for the entire site?
That's for each well. That's the flowback period for the well. After we're done fracking it, we'll drill out the plugs, and when we start drilling out the plugs and it starts producing oil and gas, the equipment has to have a minimum amount of gas before it can go to sales, and then until it reaches that level, we've got to flare it for a short period of time. It doesn't take long. A lot of times it's less than a day or none at all.
Right. But in aggregate, with 52 wells, it can be a fair amount of time that there's potential flaring throughout the site.
When we start drilling out these wells, on our proposed first visit, there'll be 14 wells. They'll take about 3 days per well. For the drill outs, we'll have 2 drill out rigs on there. So it'll be basically seven times 2 that we'll be doing. So we'll be flaring 2 wells at a time to the same flare. We usually use a common flare.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission, comments?
I'd like to address more on the flaring issue if I could. My name's Scott Donato, Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Great Western, 1801 Broadway, Denver, Colorado. There is some occasional flaring during drilling as well, very short periods of time. If they get a gas kick, the flare is there as a safety measure. It can be an hour, a couple hours at most. And then during the production part of the operation, it's not really flaring per se. When you think of flaring that you might see, it's enclosed flares, what we call ECDs, emission control devices. So the minimal gases that come off the tanks that we can't recapture gets burned in those flares at a 98% destruction efficiency. So technically that's flaring of gas, but it's not really a flare that's visible. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understood all that.
Anyone else have any comments, questions? No further questions. I'd entertain a motion on the item.
You need 2 separate motions here for the pad and the drilling site?
Well, yeah, this one will be just for the drilling pad, correct, Carlin?
Specific
Yeah.
agenda item C4,
Yeah,
C2.
C2, sorry.
C2, yeah. So just before the drilling pad, the production pad will be the next items.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we forward a recommendation of approval for the conditional use grant to allow the oil and gas drilling pad with the staff's comments of their conditions presented this evening.
Second. And moved by Commissioner Harding, second by Commissioner Dennison, that we forward a recommendation of approval to the town board for the oil and gas facility drilling pad at Water Valley West Subdivision, Lot 5, and noted with the conditions that staff has listed with the approval. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed vote no. Motion carries unanimously. We will close our regular meeting, open up another public hearing for the conditional use grant to allow oil and gas facilities for the production pad, Poudre Valley West Subdivision Lot 5. Carlin, anything further?
No, nothing further.
Okay. Anything from the applicant, any additional information pertaining to the production pad?
Not specifically the production pad, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to leave the commission with the impression that it's Great Western that did all this work. I see Dave Quabe, I saw earlier, and Chandra, Dr. Berry. They had a lot to do with this, and we've been working with a lot of neighbors on west side of County Road 13 in this solution during this project. And, you know, Dr. Berry will tell you, they met with the governor. This was a very visible project, and we spent years and had a lot of great input from them, and we're happy with the result. But, it's been a process, and they were a big part of that. So I just want the commission to know that.
Okay, thank you.
And I
Since
do
this is
want
the public, go ahead, Scott.
I just want to clarify, though, that this is its own unique conditional use grant for this site. So there was a previous site, so I just want to clarify that even though it has been discussed, this particular, accessing these particular minerals have been worked on over the last 4 years, they are two distinct sites, and I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, is there anyone who has any comments, questions for either staff or the applicant? If you could come to the podium. Okay, seeing there be none. And entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Been moved by Commissioner Bushelman, second by Commissioner Annable, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed vote no. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item, by reconvening a regular meeting for a recommendation to the town board for the conditional use grant for the oil and gas facility for the production pad, Poudre Valley West Subdivision Lot 5. Anything further that you have, Carlin?
Nothing further.
Okay. Anything further from the applicant?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Comments, questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we forward a recommendation of approval to the town board for the conditional use grant to allow the oil and gas facilities for the production pad at the Poudre Valley West Subdivision Lot 5, subject to the conditions presented by staff.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Dennison, second by Commissioner McWilliams, that we forward a recommendation of approval to the town board for the conditional use grant for the oil and gas facility production pad, and with the noted conditions from staff listed. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed vote no. And motion carries unanimously. Okay. We will move on to the next item, which is another public hearing for a conditional use grant to allow oil and gas facilities for the Boo Farm annexation. Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This proposal is for a conditional use grant for water tanks, which are associated with oil and gas facilities on the rain dance pads. Again, Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code outlines the intent of the conditional use grant process and includes a specific section for conditional use grants for oil and gas facilities. Some of the conditions that the town board may consider is visual requirements, landscape requirements, and floodplain requirements. In this case, there's not a floodplain. So the site is located just north of Crossroads Boulevard and east of what was the County Road 15 alignment. It's west of South Hill 2nd, south of Hilltop Estates, and east of the proposed Raindance subdivision. This site is located adjacent to an existing industrial concrete storage business to the south. The site includes approximately 1.5 acres, and the proposal is for 4 water tanks. The site is zoned O for recreation open space, which requires a site plan with this approval. Keeping in mind this pad location is dependent on the Raindance oil and gas pads, that water would be piped to this location and then picked up by trucks. The haul route will be consistent with the route that Raindance pads will be using. They will be accessing Crossroads Boulevard at this point here. Again, this is the 15th, the County Road 15 alignment, which has vacated right-of-way. And the truck hauling will then go from this access point west along Crossroads to I-25. The land use plan also calls this area out as recreation open space. Future plans include a middle school site to the east in this location, as well as Parks is working on I think it's a park and school site area, also located in this area. The property owner still owns this portion. The school district owns this portion. One of the conditions of approval is that the Lebu Farm annexation property is subdivided. It currently is unsubdivided. This portion here would be carved off. Again, approximately 1.5 acres. There's a turnaround here for trucks. Fire has also reviewed this, and they've addressed those comments. Over here is a tracking pad to help mitigate with mud and other debris. In this location along the south, there will be a landscape berm. It'll include some evergreen trees and natural native grass seed. There will also be a berm around the 4 water tanks here to screen from adjacent properties. And this shows the profile with the berm surrounding the tanks. Over here, you know, so those areas respectively are right here. This is the cross section below. And this site was also included in the neighborhood meeting of March 2nd of this year, along with the Raindance pads. There's one neighborhood meeting at the rec center that was for all 3 sites. The notifications for this meeting were the same as the Raindance pads. as shown here, and the yellow highlighted area that shows the properties that were notified. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the town board of the conditional use grant with the following conditions. 1 through 5 are specific to this site, that all remaining Planning Commission and staff comments shall be addressed, that the minor subdivision is completed and recorded with Weld County, that the truck hauling route shall remain in accordance with Exhibit A, that is the hauling route that was included in your packet. That the periods of hauling also the same as the rain dance paths to avoid before and after school traffic, as well as the peak times of commuter traffic. And that all landscape screening shown on the plan shall be completed no later than 30 days after the construction of the facility. And irrigation shall be included to ensure establishment of all plant materials. And 6, these are the standard conditions of approval for oil and gas facilities. These are almost identical to the rain dance conditions, with the exception of those that specifically have to do with drilling, such as sound walls and other drilling, sound mitigation, and screening. Again, site lighting, all light fixtures, security or otherwise, shall use the full cutoff light fixtures to mitigate light pollution. Temporary screening, as well as permanent screening surrounding the 4 water tanks. And security fencing is included. And then as far as oil and gas equipment, the applicant shall utilize electric motors in order to mitigate noise impacts to the neighboring properties. And the applicant shall ensure that wells and tanks are of minimum size required to satisfy present and future functional requirements to mitigate visual impacts. Low profile tanks shall be utilized and shall be installed in the least visible manner possible. All tanks and equipment shall be painted to blend in with the surrounding landscape. The air quality conditions of approval are exactly the same as the ones covered earlier. The same with water quality, with the one addition shown here in italics. And the emergency containment, also the standard condition of approval, as well as the waste disposal, also the standard condition, and the certification blocks, also the same. And the following notes shall be included on the drilling and site improvement plans, in this case the site plan. The applicant shall comply with all rules and regulations of the COGCC, as well as the Public Health Department and Environment. Comply with Windsor Severance Fire Rescue. The facilities are kept clean and maintained at all times. And if the site is proposed from a town of Windsor street, again, in this case, Crossroads Boulevard, a access point shall be required or shall be approved by the town of Windsor Engineering Department. And second, again, the applicant will comply with the conditions of the Windsor Severance Fire Rescue, and the addition of all trucks and equipment shall be equipped and utilize white noise backup alarms. And at this time, I'd ask that the following be entered into the record: the application and supplemental materials, the staff memo and supporting documents. This also includes 2 public comments, which are identical to the rain dance pads, all testimony presented during the public hearing, and the recommendation.
Carlin, thank you. Does the applicant have any additional information?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions pertaining to this agenda item? Seeing there isn't any, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Harding, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed vote no. And motion carries unanimously. We will now reconvene our regular meeting, move on to the next agenda item, which is the recommendation of the town board for the conditional use grant to allow oil and gas facilities on the Boo Farm annexation. Carlin, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Questions, comments from the commissioner for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. How long is the trucking gonna go on there, or do you just, how soon will you pipe it in?
I'm sorry?
How soon will you get the piping in there to store the trucks or
That's
nothing
right.
in there, or will that be permanent?
Well, it is permanent, and that was at the request of not only the neighbors west of County Road 13, but Windsor and Water Valley, the surface owner as well, that all fluids be piped off location. Steve, you want to come up and talk about, that flow back, most of that water, I think 80% of it is out and gone in the first 4 months or something? So it's very quick, so that traffic dies down very fast, and he can elaborate.
As soon as we're done fracking, we do the drill out, like we talked about earlier, there's a rapid decline in water production. Of course, when we start to drill out, everything in the wellbore starts out as water, so all the wellbore volume is going to be doing that. Within the first week, like we talked about earlier, the water starts turning, or the water rate starts coming down dramatically, and it comes down probably 50% in the first week, and then and it's probably down over 90% in the first year. So there's a very rapid decline. So the initial flowback period is usually the highest truck volume, but that lasts between 1 week and 1 month, and then it gets to a very low production rate after that.
So the water, it continues even beyond that time period?
Yeah,
Getting water out of
it's usually proportional to the oil that's produced, so it's like around 10%, 10 to 15% of the oil production. So it's going to be, on the order of, if the oil's making, 100 barrels a day, we'd be like 10 barrels a day. So it'd take like 2 weeks to get enough water out of a well to fill a truck. So.
I got a question for the applicant. Is there any of the conditions you have any issues with that are listed?
No, Mr. Chairman, we're good with everything we've seen.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion of Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the conditional use grant to the town board subject to the conditions staff has proposed.
Seconded.
And moved by Commissioner Annable, second by Commissioner Harding, that we forward a recommendation of approval of the conditional use grant to allow the oil and gas facility to the Blue Farm annexation with the conditions listed by staff. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed will vote no. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you everyone who sat through all of this. I know it's a little boring, but have to get there. Okay, communications from Planning Commission. Tim, you have anything?
No, sir?
Mr. Harding?
Nothing.
Jared?
Nope, nothing.
Communications communication from our town board liaison, which isn't here tonight. Communication from staff. Carly?
Just one item on your last agenda, there was a meeting for June 5th to discuss with the town board housing diversity, and that has been bumped to future meeting date to be determined, as they will be, the town board will be interviewing for the open position.
Anything else? Scott?
No communications.
Crystal? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. I think I made that motion.
Didn't take me long.
You have to do it.
KJAC, Timnath, Denver, Fort Collins, Boulder, listener-powered radio.
Hey, remember the 80s?
Stationphonic oxygenetic amplifier graphophonic delivery.